before we get the slides, I'm a partner in PwC, cybersecurity focused primarily, but I am also responsible for blockchain, fintech, and a couple of other services. In addition to that, I am chairman of the Cyber Physical Systems Security Institute. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's an organization with about 80 manufacturers of the IoT and industrial controls, and we look at the risks and the approaches to address those risks, where cyber attack can cause physical impacts to lives, well-being, environment, and shipping and logistics is one of the industries very much impacted by that. So for all of those reasons, this was a very interesting session or topic for me. That's all right. I'll get started. So I'll try to link, so I'm the cybersecurity bit in the subtitle of this event, but I'll try to link it all together at the end, so the cybersecurity, blockchain, and IoT. But I'll focus on the cybersecurity. And my first question for you is, how many of you are worried about cybersecurity in shipping and logistics? All right, few. Well, that's a good sign. That's a good sign because most of my clients are not, and they should be. Oh, excellent. So I worked either as an interim executive or a consultant with a number of logistics companies. I worked with ML, Houston, Jodis, DHL, CargoWise. I was an interim general manager there for technology. And with many more where I did investigations after a cyber incident. And I am going to try, what's happening? So, the first thing you have all heard from the media is about the cybersecurity threat increasing. You all know it, it's happening, the data breaches are in the media every day. And that growth of the cyber attacks, the impacts of the cyber attacks is huge, it's exponential. Not only, shall we try?
Yeah.
All right. So, not only that the growth is exponential, the growth of the cyber crime is much faster than any other economy. So if you look at the cyber crime growth, it's growing about 66% annually. When you look at the next statistics that I find very interesting, cybercrime is now bigger than most of the other traditional crimes combined. A little bit large range, because it's very hard to estimate it correctly, but this is different estimates. The small circle that you might see here in the corner, that's the cybersecurity part. That's the investment in cybersecurity globally. So we are already at a huge disadvantage. I want to show you one more thing. If you're a businessman, look at that. It's the 66% growth. It's the biggest market of all of the criminal markets at the moment. And by some estimates, they are reinvesting 50% of that money into the R&D. So, I mean, don't now all go into cybercrime. There are still some disadvantages there. But this is what the cybercrime environment is today. This is why cybercrime is growing so fast. And in this part of the world, we are more vulnerable than most of the other regions in the world. Various reasons, cybersecurity maturity is one of the key ones, but we are more vulnerable than other parts of the world. Very quickly, the cybersecurity is also changing, the cybercrime is also changing. It has moved from being purely targeted at financial crimes and the banks and stealing money from the banks two much more complex schemas that combine espionage, that combine various types of crime, ransomware, as you probably know. So the cyber criminals are becoming increasingly smart and adept at monetizing their skills. And keep this in mind, because this is why increasingly every industry is targeted. And I'll tell you more about the logistics. But this is why also various organizations like the World Economic Forum, or the Alliance, or various other organizations, and I don't know why the number is gone, but the number is there, about 39% or so. They either see cyber crime as one of the top risks, or the top risk that is going to impact industries, not banking, not finance, but all of the industries, the economy in general. So, when I talk to lots of my logistics and shipping clients, they say, who cares, we are not a bank. Well, the cyber crime in shipping is growing rapidly, and there are a couple of reasons. The first reason is we are talking about large monetary transfers. When you are paying your shipyard, or when you are transferring money between the players in the shipping, those are huge amounts of money. And the cyber criminals want to take a pie out of that. The other reason is there is a need to exchange lots of information between lots of different parties. It's 10, 15 parties that usually, otherwise, they don't talk to each other. There are different parts of the world, they don't talk to each other, they talk only through this process, and cyber criminals try to insert themselves in that process, because by changing the communication, they steal money or cause other problems. Whether it's the competitors or the nation states, they want to know what is being traded. So they try to find out information that they should not have the right to see, but they want to find out. They want to know which country trades with which country, where the arms are being shipped or the oil is being shipped, because that gives them, to the nation states, it gives them geopolitical information, to the competitors or to criminals, it gives them other information they can monetize. The other interesting and growing area is the competitive, so the industrial espionage and the competition. In the shipping, there is a concentration of risk, and there is still low cybersecurity maturity in the shipping. So what's happening is, by attacking shipping industry, somebody can easily disrupt their competitor, delay the product launch, impact the reputation, and so on. And we see that happening. So this is from the PwC's latest survey. It's not actually publicly out yet. It will be next week. But we have about 10,000 respondents, not just our clients, but from throughout non-clients as well. And we see that in this part of the world, more than in any other part of the world, competitors are the cause of the cybersecurity incidents. So there is a bit of a ramp up in this competitive industrial espionage and disruptions. So let me give you a couple of real-life examples. The first one, you might have heard about that. This is the World Fuel Service, where they were a victim of a bunkering fraud, and they lost about 18 million. That was criminals, traditional criminals, but increasingly using cyber methods. Another one, because it's not one, it's actually multiple. We alone worked on about 5 or 6 of those, and globally there is a much bigger number. That's where the cyber criminals insert themselves in the communication. Simplest thing they can do is to change the destination bank account and get the funds, transfer the funds out, take it in the cash as money mules and so on before the law enforcement can react. There are various attacks, ongoing attacks, and I'll mention only two. We typically give these programs of attacks, we give them some fancy names. So one was Zombie Zero, where criminals embedded malware in hardware scanners used in logistics, and out of those hardware scanners they propagated into the backend systems and eventually got to the ERP systems. The other approach was Ice Fog, which was targeting Japanese and Korean shipping companies. It was started through emails, so through phishing emails, and when the targeted shipping companies would open those emails, attackers eventually got access to the backend systems. When they have access to the backend systems, to your ERPs and so on, first they have the visibility. They see what's going where, who's trading with whom, and if it's a nation state, that's probably where they stop. They want information. If it's a cyber criminal, they go a bit further. They try to manipulate, make packages, disappear or appear or do whatever they want. There are other ways to do the same thing. You might have heard about the cyber attack on the Iranian shipping line, which caused a loss of data, lots of confusion. They had about 170 ships out at the time. Eventually, they resolved it after a couple of days, but lost significant amount and apparently lost some cargo. Luckily, it's a state-owned organization, so they've survived. If it would be a private company, it would not have survived this attack. I assume you have heard about the Antwerp, where the cyber criminals have managed to enter the ports authority systems, monitor, change information, and basically manipulate the information in the port in order to secretly get access to the drugs that they were smuggling. So they had about a ton of cocaine and of heroin that they smuggled out, but it was supported by the cybercrime. Similarly, Australian Customs and Border Protection, their systems were hacked, and the cyber criminals were watching. They wanted to find out if the containers where they have, where they're trying to smuggle their contraband, whether they have been flagged by the authorities. And various others. There were attacks on offshore installations. In these two examples, caused 19 days or 1 week, respectively, of loss of operation because of a cyber attack. And then there are some are real attacks, some are still at the research stage, but we know how to impact AIS, GPS, ECDIS, including the satellite communication and so on. So all of this gives attackers or researchers ability to pretty much do anything they want. And they have proven that they can remotely control a vessel and direct it to the way they want without actually the crew on board the ship realizing that anything's wrong. The crew is getting the data that they are heading towards Hong Kong, but the ship is actually going towards North Korea. And they are not the wiser. So this is the cybersecurity situation right now. This is happening today. This is not some fancy sci-fi or the movie stuff. This is something that we are dealing with every day. And the reasons, as I mentioned, the reasons why this is being attacked is because it's easy. They became smarter on how they monetize it. They built underground cybercrime markets where they are selling those services. So they might sell cybercrime services to competitors or anybody else who is willing to buy. And there is a low cybersecurity maturity in our industry. Now, I'll just skip very quickly to review. When we look at what's happening now, we are doing a lot of innovation in the industry. And really the blockchain and the IoT, the promise of all of this is that we are going to have parcels, cargo, or containers that are fully automated, throughout their journey, that they pay their freight and the customs automatically through Internet of Value. But the problem is, it's great and it's a fantastic promise for the efficiency and for removing lots of the problems that we discussed so far. But the more we automate it, the easier we are going to make it to those same cyber criminals that are already causing all of these problems. So my message as a cybersecurity and the blockchain person is to try and find the balance. Innovation is fantastic, but you have to balance it with focus on the cybersecurity. And I quickly just wanted to touch on some of these things. This innovation is happening so fast. It's already here in many ways. We have Amazon testing, delivery drones. We have Auto, which are the self-driving vehicles that are already, out on the roads. These are the Amazon robots in the warehouse. And I'm sure you know about this one. This is the Rolls-Royce, self-driving or remotely controlled ship, which Rolls-Royce kind of promised that it would be in production by the end of the decade. So they intend to remotely control it. The question is, how easy it's going to be for cyber criminals to take over the remote control and just take it wherever they want it. So in very short, very brief, that's my key message. And I wanted to give a couple of minutes for the Q&A.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Marin?
Yes, over there.
Is fear of this thing why a major factor why people still want to keep paper?
Yes. So if you look at the last row here, you can't probably see it from there. But the biggest obstacle to this innovation is cybersecurity. Most of my clients, whether they are in financial services or in the shipping and logistics, they do proof of concepts. They know how to implement certain new technologies. Some of those that we saw are already in PwC or even the newer ones. Why the innovation is being slowed down is because they don't know how to manage those risks and how to address the cyber security risks. So yeah, I would say that it's a big reason why innovation is not going as fast as it could.
For me, just paper is not perfect as well. We have been fraud with paper-based documentation, so it doesn't mean that they stick on the paper. There's no fraud or paper-based failing and.
Right. So we had this excellent panel which they talked about all the fraud that is currently happening on paper, right? If that's your point. So it's not so much that that now it's safer for the financial crimes.
It's easier to tamper the blame bill of lading from a carrier than to hack the total system or the case that you mentioned.
Well,
it's easier to do old style or.
Marin, one thing that Benoit is pointing out, the bill of lading fraud is so widespread.
Yeah,
it's untrackable.
Right.
So in so many, the three areas that Chris House was talking about earlier today.
Yeah.
It's so large that even international organizations, they can't track it. Understand? They can't even say they think maybe 30%, maybe 40% of bills of lading are fraudulent in some way.
I understand that. And obviously, there is a need to do something about that. However, I would still argue that the risks that the new technologies bring are unknown. And it's not about the bill of lading fraud alone. It's about the other bigger types of fraud, and it's also the risk of manipulating the vehicle or causing something that is going outside of the boundaries of financial crime and is causing impact to the, to the well-being, to the lives, to the environment. This is where the discussions are around cybersecurity, not just replacing the financial crimes.
One of the other issues particularly with bills of lading, for example, sorry, it's another lawyer speaking. One of the issues with transferring from a paper bill of lading, where obviously there is a lot of scope for fraud, but it's a fraud that we understand, and as you say, we don't yet know the scope of what would happen if we digitise everything. The other thing is there's a massive limitation legally on bills of lading, which currently mainly operate under English law. The transfer of one bill of lading from one person to another is a transfer of a contract. Under English law, you can't do that on any other kind of contract other than a bill of lading. And that's because of an act called COGSA 1992. And that act says at the end of it, the Secretary of State, this is back in 92, it says, the Secretary of State will make regulations in relation to electronic documents. He has not done so, or she has not done so. Therefore, this act does not apply to electronic bills of lading. Bolero, Ross is sitting right next to me, have attempted to replicate the functions of a bill of lading, but they can't give you an electronic bill of lading because it can't exist. They replicate the functions in an electronic format. So there are some legal and infrastructural problems there with digitising this kind of document. Not only to add to the potential of the unknown ability, as it were.
Thank you for that. That's a good point. That there is also a regulatory concern with all this innovation.
So, you've got to go.
I have another minute. If there is one more question, I think there's one more over there.
Yes, sir.
So just to ask what progress or case studies or successes there in criminal prosecution of cybercrime?
There is some progress, not in logistics or in shipping. Cybercrime is extremely hard to prosecute. There are lots of countries that don't have the right laws on books. Very interesting example is Russia. You might see there is lots of malware that is created in Russia, but a big part of those malware, one of the functions that they have in that malware is it tries to detect the language setting and the keyboard setting of the device. And if it recognizes that it's Russian, it disables itself. Why? Because as long as they target victims outside of Russia, they don't have a problem with Russian law enforcement. The moment they target internally, Russian law enforcement will go after them. So the cybercrime is a problem because it's so transnational. And that's the hardest part.
Sorry, so is the answer that we all need to install Russian keyboards?
That's one thing that would help, yes.
Marin, just on that, the prosecution element. The other thing is to remember that the people who are prosecuting at the public authorities, if you've lost money due to a cyber fraud, they don't really care. They're not caring about getting your money back to you. They care about prosecuting criminals. And that is one of the disconnects where people like lawyers speak today, but people who act on your behalf to try and get money back, we're often hampered by the fact that there are issues there.
I would, exactly, thanks. Just on that point, a few months ago, I was in Ukraine. I was working with the police there, and the policeman asked me, do I want to see the cybercrime alley, or whatever is the right translation. And I said, sure, yeah, show me what the cybercrime alley. Anyways, there's a part of the city which is, you know, huge buildings, fancy cars, you know, 5 Rolls Royces in front of the car, and everybody knows that those are the cyber criminals. Those are the organized cybercrime gangs that, you know, police shows to the tourists as an interesting curiosity, but nothing is being done about it. So, you know, you lawyers can explain how does that work.
Okay, Marin, thank you. Thank you so much. Very insightful